and welcome to Your Favourite Teacher. Today we're looking at English Language GCSE and how to achieve top marks using your reading and writing skills. The largest and most important question on the Language Paper 2 reading section is question 4, the comparison of the author's methods. Worth 16 marks in total, this question is worth about 20% of the whole Language Paper 2, and almost half the marks available for the reading section. So getting it right is important. Language Paper 2 isn't just called Paper 2, it actually has a title, and that's Writers' Viewpoints and Perspectives. The importance of which will help you understand how to approach question 4. In question 2, you will have identified explicit surface-level differences between the two texts. In question 3, your analysis of one author's language will have begun. In question 4, you now have to use both of these skills together. Not only does this question require you to analyse the effects of each author's language choices and the way they've structured the text, it also requires you to compare the purpose and effect of both authors' work, pointing out similarities and differences between the way they have written. In this video, we'll go over the basics and give you some tips on what to look for when planning to compare authors' viewpoints and perspectives. So, the question. Again, like our other Language Paper 2 videos, we're using the extracts on parenting which appeared in the 2017 summer exams. So you'll need a copy of both sources. Source A, titled, "How Can My Son Be a Year Old Already?" and Source B, "Boy Lost." We said before that the name of Language Paper 2 is actually Writers' Viewpoints and Perspectives, which is important to remember when you look at the question. With this question, we're told to refer to the whole of Source A together with the whole of Source B, meaning you can find your evidence anywhere, even if you've used it already for questions 1, 2 or 3. Remember though, the examiners aren't silly. The questions will usually be designed so that the portions of the text needed to answer question 4 will likely come from sections that you haven't yet explored. In this case, the task we're given is to compare how the writers convey their different perspectives and feelings about their children growing up. The wording gives you a lot of clues as to how the question ought to be answered. Like the name of this whole paper indicates, you need to focus on how the writers themselves view the given topic, in this case, their children growing up. Sometimes you're not just comparing different perspectives and feelings. The question might ask you to compare their attitudes towards a given topic, or even their ideas on the given topic. When it comes to how you compare those perspectives and feelings, the bullet points given lay out a clear method for how you can answer the question. You should compare their different perspectives and feelings, meaning find exactly how their perspectives and feelings are different. There's clearly going to be something different between the way these two writers view and feel about their children growing up. Compare the methods the writers use to convey their different perspectives and feelings. This step will come second, as once you've identified how each speaker feels about their children, you'll then need to identify the methods by which they show you this. Methods in this case can mean anything from the way they've structured the text, the language they've chosen, the types of images they create, their words, and so on. There are no limits on what a method means in this case, so as long as you can explain how to show their perspective and viewpoint. Support your response with references to both texts. Remember, you want to include short, clear micro quotes, embedding them into your answers. References can also mean simply referring to something, rather than having to give a direct quote. This question overall is worth 16 marks, meaning to try and make sure you are gaining a 5 or higher, you'll want to reach for at least 9 marks on this question. Now, to begin prepping to answer this question, let's look again at both sources. The topic we're given to discuss is the way in which they feel about their children growing up. By this point in the exam, you should have a fairly good idea as to what at least one of the writers feels on this given topic, as you've already examined their language choices in question 3. The language analysis might not completely relate to the topic of question 4, but there's likely going to be some significant overlap that can give you a good head start. Let's begin with the first bullet point, compare their different perspectives and feelings. In order to understand what each author's perspective and feeling is, a good place to begin is thinking about their purpose for writing their piece. Often, the context box at the top of the exam paper can help you figure this one out. There's usually a brief summary of the source, which can include some key information and hints as to why the author of each source wrote the piece. A second good place to look in order to figure each author's purpose out is the title. So let's have a look at these two titles. Source A: How can my son be a year old already? And source B: Boy lost. Because source A's title is a question, we can guess that the writer is slightly confused about how quickly his son has grown up. However, we also know that the author's son is still just a child because of the fact that he's only 1 year old. Source B suggests something very different. Instead of confusion, the word lost makes the text seem like it's upset about or grieving the boy. The fact that the boy is lost shows a clear difference between the two writers' perspectives. Source A still has his child, whilst the child in source B is gone. Just by looking at the titles, we've already identified a clear difference. Source A is confused and frightened at watching the son grow up too quickly, whereas source B's writer is grieving. Remember that a comparison isn't just about differences, so if you read the sources and find some similarities, it's worth noting these as well. Now, as you go through and identify these similarities and differences, it's a good idea to jot them down somewhere. So jot these down either on the source sheet or a spare piece of paper. A short note like this will help you remember what you need to write about when you answer the question. Beyond the title then, what else is good to look for when trying to find out about different perspectives and feelings? Emotive language. If the question is asking you to identify the author's feelings, have a look for examples where they try and evoke emotions. In source A, the writer says that his son is blasting ahead as fast as he can. He's leaving milestone after milestone in his wake and tiny parts of me along with him. Luckily here, the author has told us exactly how he feels about his son growing, because the father feels like he is left in his wake, with the son far ahead. Now in source B, we can look for where the same feeling is conveyed in a different way, or how feelings altogether are conveyed through the use of emotive language. Another thing that you might want to look at is the narrative perspective. Which tense is the writer talking about this subject in? If they're using the past tense, it might help you explain why they missed something they've lost. However, if it's written in the present tense, it might show the current ongoing problem. Identifying a difference in tense will help you identify a difference in perspective. In the case of our parenting source, the mother in source B is writing about the past, showing that she still misses and holds on to the memories of her child. But how can the same be said for source A? The next thing you want to notice is repetition. Repetition is very commonly used in non-fiction pieces, because non-fiction pieces are usually used to make a point of some kind. For example, in source A, we've got, he'll never be the tiny baby, and he's never going to stop changing. And again, nor will he be the baby amazed by the taste and texture of solid food. In this source, the author repeats the negative language of never and nor to emphasize all the things which in time he will lose because of the son's change. Source B uses repetition as well, so this would be a good point to compare. She repeats what they said about how joyful she must be now that her boy has grown up, only to constantly deny that there are joys. She also repeats "I want" multiple times, showing how she longs to have her child again. Next, let's look at semantic fields. A semantic field is when an author uses a group of words with the same connotations within a single piece. When analysing an author's viewpoint on a particular subject, you might want to look at the kind of repeated connotations they use to refer to that topic. For example, the author of source B creates a semantic field of chaos and messiness when she describes the memories of crumbs on the carpet, paste spilt on the kitchen, and so on. Clearly, this feeling of chaos is part of the way she views her child and possibly his growth, so it'd be worth mentioning. Titles we've already discussed, but this is something that you always need to remember as they give you a big clue on how the author is feeling. Once you've identified how the author feels, it's your job to start looking for how you know they feel that way based on their writing. It's all getting a bit confusing, I know, but remember, question 3 will ideally have those bullet points to remind you of what you need to do. You want to try and write 3 paragraphs comparing at least one method each author has used to convey their perspective, feelings, or attitudes. When you plan, aim to put together these 3 ideas before you begin writing and highlight the evidence in the text, numbering it 1 to 3 if you have an order to make sure that you're organised before you start writing. For more on how to write the best possible answer for question 4, pop over to our next video on answering language paper question 4. I'm Miss Meeks, and we've been revising the English language GCSE. Good luck.